We started, I guess, around the end of October, actually songwriting on the album, and there's always a lot of ideas kicking around with Iron Maiden, and it's actually writing material is something which I'm ashamed to admit we don't really have a tremendous problem with. We've always got loads and loads of riffs kicking around. I always have like piles and piles of old bits and odds and sods of guitar chords and lyrics and things. And I know Janick has a huge load of cassette load of riffs as well. So in actual fact, there's plenty of material to choose from and pick from. The problem in actual fact on this album was really what to leave out, because we had 16 potential songs, really, even without trying, and we got as far as doing a dozen of them, and we had another four that we were sort of in the pre-production stage with, and we just said, well, look, we're never going to be able to do all 16. Why don't we just do these 12? I mean, isn't 12 songs on an album enough? It's going to be an hour long as it is. And so we went with those 12 songs, of which there is a tremendous variety even within the 12 songs. I mean, there's writing partnerships between myself and Janick, and between myself and Dave, and between Janick and Steve, and of course Steve writing his own stuff on his own. And I think that there's a depth of the material on this album which has been which hasn't been there on any previous Iron Maiden album. It goes right the way from things that sound almost sort of wouldn't sound out of place in a Pink Floyd album, to things that sound sort of like vaguely Celtic, to things that sound like the ghost of 1972's crept on there with Hammond organs. And I mean, it's just an astonishing range that I didn't even realise we'd done, in fact, until I got the final mix, the final tape of the record, and listening to all the tracks back to back, I was really knocked out, because I thought, my God, what have we got here? We got something really special. I think that people aren't making records like this anymore, with this kind of variety, especially not a band which has been on the road and working as hard as we've done over the 10 or 12 years, however long it's been. I think it's remarkable that you come up with an album like this that sounds like fresh as a daisy. It sounds like a new band. From a technical point of view, we recorded it at a studio that Steve built on the site of an old barn where we recorded the last record, which is sort of in his backyard, effectively. It does have a very, very good sound to it. I mean, we went for the best combination of old technology in terms of using old valve mics and things like that, and new technology, i.e. Digital recording technology, and used a Neve V-Series desk with all the computers and flying faders and everything else that people use now to make life easier for themselves when you're doing mixes. But we still record the album, even using that all this new technology. We still record it in, how can I put it, a fairly traditional way. In other words, it's the performance that is the thing, and all the equipment does is merely enable you to capture the performance better. We've always managed to remain as independent as we can in terms of writing material. I mean, nobody's ever had any say in what goes on an Iron Maiden record other than Iron Maiden, just the five of us. That's it. We make all the decisions between the five of us. But having said that, there's definitely been times when I've felt, it would be nice to just, go away and perhaps not do something for a few months and come back and take stock and take a little bit more time over things. If you say it's like a midpoint in a band's career right now, to come up with a record like this is fantastic. I mean, it's more than just a lifesaver. It's like a bolt out of the blue. It's a rocket ship to the moon, this record, in terms of where we can go now. Because once you break the mold with a record like this, and clean out the broom cupboard, then you can really open up your horizons. Janick has grown in the last 2 years into the sort of guitarist he always deserved to be, but nobody else ever let him be. Because I always, I mean, I just get gut feelings about people, and when I saw him, God knows how many years ago, 12 years ago was it, or whenever I was in Samson, I saw him playing in a church hall, with White Spirit, and he had just, I mean, it was just the way his fingers hit the fretboard and just the way he produced sounds out of the guitar that I thought, this bloke has what this guy is really, 1 in a million or 1 in 10,000 or whatever it is. This guy has really got something very special between him and a guitar, and it's going to come out. It has to come out of him, and he did the stuff with Gillan, some of which was good, some of which was, was okay. But I think a lot of that was because of political garbage in the band. I mean, I knew, the guys in the band, fairly well. I'd toured with them in Samson, and I know that things, there were funny things going on in bands. And whenever you have a funny atmosphere in a band, it's very hard, particularly when there's a big age difference in the band, as there was with Janick. He was always looked upon as being, oh yes, the new kid on the block in Gillan. Not, I don't think, by Ian, but I think probably by the other guys in the band who are like experienced old pros. And I hate that garbage because it stifles creativity, and it stifles the naivety and the childlike thing where you've just, because to just go and go off the deep end when you're going to play a solo, or when you're going to go and do something, or when you're going to perform. You've got to open up when you're performing, especially in the studio. You can't just be a clam and keep your sphincter tight shut and go and yell and scream because you're mad as hell, etc., and just fit into the grooves of everybody else. You've got to be prepared to open yourself up and make a fool of yourself if necessary, but just don't think about it. Just go do it, because nobody, and be in the confidence that nobody's going to laugh at you if you screw up. And his playing on this record, I mean, his playing on my solo record, I thought was outstanding. And I think that his playing on the new Maiden record is, I mean, more than twice as good. I would say it's really truthful guitar playing, and it comes, from really deep down inside. And I can't say how much I think his sound and his personality and everything, his whole stamp is all over this record. He was a bit worried at first that the Iron Maiden songwriting process might be a bit conservative, in terms of it's got to fit into an Iron Maiden sort of mold. And I was more like, well, no, let's open things up a bit, And I think a song like Wasting Love, for example, which he was like, oh, Steve's never going to go for this. I said, no. I said, just let's just wait and see. Let's play it to him. And of course, Steve went absolutely bananas about it, because I think it's a really good song, and there's nothing Steve likes better than a good song. And a lot of people make that mistake with him, of thinking that because he writes lots of time changes, because he writes lots of tricky little bits here and there, that he doesn't listen to good songs and he doesn't appreciate them. He's actually more of a songwriting fiend than a lot of people that profess themselves to be songwriting fiends. It's just that he doesn't choose to write in cliches all the time. So anyway, so that was I suppose the difference in the relationship. Was it was ironic that he was being almost a bit on the conservative side in that sense, but I was very keen to try and shift things around. I mean, ironically, we had one song which sounded like a dead ringer for an Iron Maiden song, and we took it along, and Steve said, I said, yeah, it's good, but it sounds too much like an old Iron Maiden song. and yet it was like, oh man, he said, you can't win, can you? He said, and I said, no, I said, but that's exactly what I mean, I said, just go with what feels good, and 9 times out of 10 it will be what makes it to the record is what feels good first off the bat. And Be Quick or Be Dead was I think it was it the first? Yeah, it was the first track we wrote together for the album. And we did all the songwriting, I guess, in about me and Janick's songwriting in I guess 3 or 4 afternoons around my house really. And I'm pretty lazy with the words. I usually get a verse and a chorus, and then I say, oh, well, that'll do for now. I've got a verse and a chorus, and then I sit around for about 2 or 3 months, waiting for inspiration to fall on my head like bird shit, and then it doesn't, and it's like 2 weeks, and I've got to sing the bloody thing. So I start panicking and start taking train rides to nowhere, and taking a scribbling pad and staring out the window and things. But that's how I, get my jollies when I write the words. With Davey, he sent me a tape. He sent me a cassette tape of one track was Judas My Guide, which was almost like a complete backing track. And what was interesting was that it was just him on guitar and a drum machine. And it sounded, and straight away I put it on, and my wife shouted from downstairs, and she went, "Is that the new Iron Maiden album?" and it just sounded instantly like Iron Maiden, just Davey on his own. It was it was fascinating. So I stuck some words to that one, and more or less just I think we dropped in like a middle 8 or something, or whatever you want to call it, in the middle, and that song remained more or less as Davey had conceived it, with just me singing over the top. Chains of Misery was a bit more raw when it arrived. It was basically just the riff that starts the track with a little variation on it halfway through, and it just kind of went on and on like that. It didn't really have much formal structure to it. And it didn't take a great deal, because it was in like this sort of like 6/8 thing. And Maiden had never, to my knowledge, never really done a song like that before, in that kind of shuffle sort of groove feel. So that in itself was enough to make things sound quite different. I remember we had a big argument in the studio about whether or not it should be played faster or slower. We had the same argument about Flight of Icarus actually as well, and I thought, oh well, I better stick my head on the chopping block then, because I decided that it had to be the tempo it is at the moment on the album, because I thought any faster it would sound like it was being rushed, and I didn't want to fall into the trap of sounding like we were panicking on a song. And I still maintain Flight of Icarus sounds great the speed it is on the record, but we still play it twice as fast live, so we have a compromise. From Here to Eternity is a straightforward, tongue-in-cheek groove rock song. It's the most light-hearted tune on the record, because the rest of the album is pretty black in terms of its lyrical vision, if you like. Although I don't get depressed about that, I always get cheered up by listening to black lyrical visions. I mean, it comes from a misspent childhood listening to Peter Hamill lyrics and things like Sabbath, but all that sort of like mega depressing, think I'll just stick my head under this metal press, and everything, and it great, I mean that stuff cheers me up. The last album was done in a tearing hurry. It was great fun. It was full of enthusiasm. It was loads of fun. I thought the songs on it were terrific, and I thought the sound on the album didn't do them any justice at all in hindsight. Very easy to say things in hindsight, and I'm not fingering blame, because we were all equally to blame, because I was up there in the truck going, oh yeah, it sounds great, what a great vibe, along with everybody else. Because we were all up to our knees in mud, and we were doing it in a barn, and it was in the depths of winter, and then we were all, wandering around with video cameras, taking pictures of ourselves, doing somersaults in daffodils and everything. I mean, it was a good laugh. It was a hoot. In actual fact, it's exactly what we needed after 8 years of tour album, and having everything really tightly scheduled. It was the band, It was the band coming out and finally coming out and really having a good laugh making a record together. And the tour, I think, was the most enjoyable Iron Maiden tour for ages, that tour. So now, after all that, there's suddenly the creeping realization set in. I think Janick had a lot to do with it, because he's a halfway house, I think, between me and Steve. If I'm like the one that wants to, fly off and do potty things all the time, Steve is the guy that is all he's interested in is Iron Maiden and being really, kind of more conservative in that sense, with a small c. And Janick, I think, is somewhere between the two. And I think that having him in the band as somebody who can always be relied upon to speak his mind, which is something Adrian didn't really do. It's not really in Adrian's character, if you like, to do that. Janick will always, if you ask Janick what he thinks, he will always give you a dead straight answer. Not what he thinks not what he thinks you want. It's what you want to hear. He will give you exactly what he thinks, and everybody in the band respects him for that. And I think it's given us the opportunity to turn around and say to everybody, okay, everybody has the job of pulling everybody else up by their bootstraps on this record in terms of sound and in terms of everything. And we questioned everything on this album. We questioned everything from Eddie to the logo to to the strings, to who we were going to do equipment with, to who was the lighting, who was the PA company. We took everything apart before we went into this record and said there's no sacred cows left for Iron Maiden, and if we're going to carve our name on whatever the totem pole is of success that ends up in the year 2000, if we're going to be there, then we have to get ourselves stripped down and really go for exactly what we need to do that. And so that's what we've done on the record. And I guess the reason why we never did it before was because we were always too busy touring and making records and doing anything. So we never really got a chance to step outside of ourselves and say, hang on a minute, what has been going on in the rest of the world the last 10 years that we've been selling, millions of records? I think we've done what we have to do with the record to guarantee a place, right up the top of the first division. This is the one which I think is going to slap people upside the head